Welcome and thank you for joining us on this open Zoom on the circular economy and bioeconomy. My name is Sam King and I'm the manager of the Land and Waste team here at the Climate Change Commission. I'll explain how the session is going to run, but first I'd like to invite Bevan to open our session with a karakia.
Kia ora tātou. E te atua ao whi tai mātou ki a koe. Ka whakamoemeti hoki ki a koe. Mō ngā hua katoa te hau, te hekinga iho o te ua. Te tipu o ngā kai, te atipoti mō ngā kai o te moana, ngā kararehe o te whenua. Ngā manu o te wao, aura oratanga mō mātou, mō te tangata manaki te mātou. Kia huri atu ai o katoa. Creator, we offer you thanks for the wonder of creation, for the power that makes of the breeze and the coolness of the rain. The elements that provides sustenance, the resources of the sea, all animal life upon the land, the birds of the forest, and spiritual sustenance for our lives. Care for us all, and we shall dedicate the environment at the centre of our circular and bioeconomy. Kia ora tātou. Over to you, Sam.
Kia ora, Bevan. Thank you very much. So today you're going to hear from Emma Richardson, our chapter lead on the circular and bioeconomy. Be an opportunity to have your questions answered. Please use the Q&A button rather than the chat to put your questions in, and feel free to put your questions as they occur to you. We're monitoring them in the background and they'll be picked up. We will try to get to every question, but if we don't have time to get to yours, please feel free to email us at hello@climatecommission.govt.nz. We'd also love to know who's joining us today. So if you're comfortable, please put your name and your organisation in the chat section so we know who's here. Finally, just a quick reminder that this session is recorded and will be made available on the Commission's website afterwards, along with all of the other open Zooms in our series about our emissions reduction plan advice. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to Emma.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to get straight into it. So slide change, please. The Commission was created in 2019 with the passing of the Zero Carbon Bill, which amended the Climate Change Response Act. Our roles under the Act are varied, but the factors that we must consider are detailed and specific. As an example, the Act requires the Commission to consider matters such as scientific knowledge, the distribution of costs, benefits and risks between generations, and the likely economic impacts. We are also required to consider the Crown-Māori relationship, Te Ao Māori, and specific effects on iwi Māori in the advice we give to the government. We are an independent Crown entity that holds an advisory role within the wider climate change policy sector for New Zealand. We provide independent advice to the government. We also monitor the progress being made towards our climate goals. As part of this, we assess the adequacy of government action and we share our conclusions publicly. The conclusions and the recommendations of the Commission are made by the Board, not by the Minister or Cabinet. These conclusions and recommendations are founded on scientific knowledge, evidence and analysis, and they're also based on the input of stakeholders and the people of New Zealand. We provide advice that supports future pathways that are responsible, fair and sustainable. We realise that it is important that these pathways do not broaden current inequalities. Rather, they need to work alongside to address well-being challenges like healthy housing, urban form, and the future of transport, and the state of our natural environment. We know the transition to a low emissions and climate resilient society will bring a mix of opportunities and benefits, challenges and costs, and the effects, good and bad, will be felt by all of us. Slide change, please. So how this fits into our work program. We are currently consulting on our draft advice to the government on the direction of policy actions required to meet New Zealand's climate goals. It is then the role of the government to decide on the policy choices necessary to give effect to the emissions reduction plan. It is important their advice reflects what the people are experiencing and care about, and that we have input from people. We want to know what you think, and we want to know if you think our recommendations reflect the correct path New Zealand should be taking to reduce emissions to meet our legislative targets. Once we have incorporated what we've heard into our final advice, we will submit our final advice to the Minister on the 31st of December this year. Slide change, please. So the second emissions budget has for 2026 to 2030 has already been set, and the government now needs to put a plan into place to deliver it. And you may already have noticed that this round of policy advice is different to last time, because the government already has a first emission reductions plan in place. So in this advice, we focus on building on the work already underway. Our work focuses on identifying the critical policy gaps and where existing actions might need to be strengthened to achieve the second emissions budgets and the country's longer term climate goals. As there is already significant climate action underway, this round of advice has fewer recommendations than our 2021 advice. We have prioritised our draft recommendations against 6 aspects that are each critical to consider, all of which stem from the requirements of the Climate Change Response Act. The potential for how the opportunity or policy can help New Zealand meet the second emissions budget and beyond is one of those, taking into account the scale, scientific evidence, technology, economic feasibility and cost. We also considered any gaps in the policy, the pace and timing of action. How will the pace be sufficient to contribute to the second emissions budget? And will it lay the foundations for achieving future budgets and targets? What are the risks to realising its potential and other risks associated with action? We consider equity considerations, and we also consider the co-benefits that action might bring. For example, well-being, economic development, ecological well-being, and environmental well-being. We've also used the policy framework pictured here, which has helped us assess the direction of policy needed to support the priority actions. The slide change, please. This slide is just really a reminder that we're currently consulting on our draft advice, and we'll be receiving submissions until the 26th of June. Slide change, please. And again, please. Now, onto the circular economy. I'd briefly like to clarify what the Commission might mean by the terms circular economy, bioeconomy, and circularity within our advice. In line with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the term circular economy generally refers to an economic system that is based on designing out waste and pollution and reusing products and materials. The circular economy system can apply to both finite and infinite materials and promotes the circularity of resources and energy within production systems through establishing a restorative cycle and regenerating natural systems. In contrast, the bioeconomy refers to parts of the economy that use renewable biological resources, otherwise referred to as biomass, to produce food, products, and energy. In our advice, we advance actions that will help create a more circular economy and that will help build a sustainable bioeconomy. Where the circularity of biomass can be achieved through regeneration, we also support actions that will support a circular bioeconomy. A slide change, please. This is about the key messages in our draft advice. The Commission are of the view that there is an opportunity for the government to enhance the global decarbonisation efforts by advancing the transition to a more circular economy and sustainable bioeconomy. Our advice recognises that advancing this transition will not only help to create low carbon outcomes across the economy, but it will also help build resilience of the economy, promote environmental well-being and cultural benefits, and help generate business and economic opportunities for New Zealand. In the existing emissions reduction plan, the government commits to commencing a circular economy and bioeconomy strategy. This strategy should create circular flows of materials across the economy, including food, beverage, construction, waste, and agricultural sectors, amongst others. In our advice, we emphasise the importance of actively working with iwi Māori to take this forward. But within the next emissions budget period, we also identified the need to shift to the delivery of a comprehensive yet practical implementation pathway. We identify a range of areas that would help promote the transition to a more circular economy, including the need to reduce the embodied carbon of products, goods, and services. To ensure that the embodied emissions are accounted for, we talk about the need to bring embodied emissions to the fore in decision making, and to understand and that to do this, we understand that we will need better data on embodied emissions at the material level. We also address the need for a better circular economy data and consider that the lack of data exists as a barrier to businesses and organisations to innovate to adopt more circular practices currently. The Commission also consider and continue to recognise that product stewardship has a key role in the circular economy, that processes around this do need to be strengthened, and it is necessary to avoid the creation of waste through design, supporting renewable materials and low carbon alternatives. In terms of the bioeconomy, within our advice, we recognise that opportunities will exist to use sustainable biofeedstocks to displace higher emission energy feedstocks. And we identified the need for biomass prioritisation to support a sustainable bioeconomy. In terms of some barriers to building a sustainable and potentially circular bioeconomy, we talk about the value of updating standards to align with bioproducts and the potential use of government procurement to create demand for bioproducts. So that's really our key messages in a nutshell. We'll move now to the next slide. And this is really just a reminder that the consultation is now open for 2 months. And we really would encourage you to submit, and we do want to hear your views, but I'll hand it back to you now, Sam.
Sorry, slight technical issue there. I've got to make sure I click the right button. Thank you very much, Emma. We'll start with questions and answers. Please do put your questions and answers in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them if we have time. So we're going to begin with a question here about why does the Commission speak about the circular economy and not typically the circular bioeconomy?
Okay, well, we do provide targeted advice on addressing finite materials through the circular bioeconomy. I think the issue is that for a sustainable bioeconomy, biomass will not always be circular, but it always needs to be sustainable. So our advice is quite broad. It does canvas across the 2 areas, but our priority is a sustainable bioeconomy first and foremost.
Sure, thank you, Emma. Can you put another question here? How do we address the issue of embodied emissions in our previous advice, and how does this proposed advice differ?
Okay, in our previous advice, we did recognise the need to continually improve the data on embodied emissions to support the greenhouse gas inventory. But in this advice, we provided advice on the construction sector for embodied emissions. But this advice really speaks to this issue quite strongly in this chapter. And we are really calling out the need for understanding the level of embodied emissions at the material level for products so that people can make smarter choices and better decisions.
Sure, thank you. So we've got a question here from Pre-Cycle New Zealand from Nelson. Will priority be given to recycling/upcycling biological/biomass waste into new products to sequester the carbon longer, or will compost, steep, stock feed and biomass fuel be seen as equal?
At this stage, in the emissions reduction plan, I think there's a 60-40 split between aerobic and anaerobic digestion, and there's no prioritisation framework to support that. What we are actually saying in our advice, and this is probably more the waste chapter, is that we really do need a strategic long-term plan for New Zealand to understand what the split will look like. What will this balance be, and where will the priority be given? So right now there's no clear direction, but we have identified that as being an issue, and that's why we've asked for a long-term waste infrastructure plan for New Zealand.
Cool, thank you. Got a question here, how the Commission is thinking about integrating circular and sustainable bioeconomy policy with other sustainable agenda issues, for example, domestic food and food supply security, biodiversity of flora and fauna.
Sorry, can you repeat the second half of that question again? For example?
Of course. Yeah, for example, domestic food and food supply security, or biodiversity and flora and fauna.
Okay. Within our advice, we do identify the need to have some sort of, I can't remember our words exactly we use in the chapter, but some sort of overarching government agency who is responsible for circular economy. Currently, it's sort of split across different agencies, and so I'd really, we've identified that as being an issue. So I can't answer that question, but we do recognise that this is an issue and we do need some guidance here from the government and some ownership.
Cool. We're keen to have any further questions, so if you do have them, please put them in the question and answer box. We've only got a couple at the moment. So we might have to get back to this one, but I'll see if you can answer it. Does the wording of New Zealand's free trade agreements allow the regulation needed to increase circular resource use and product stewardship to be applied to importers?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question, but it is something I could look into and get back to the person who's asking. I can't answer it off the top of my head. Sam, unless you have any thoughts on that one? No,
I don't, but it would be good also to point out to please make a submission if you feel that we've missed these sort of issues. The other question, and if there aren't any more, we might close after that, is why are there no recommendations on the circular and bioeconomy?
Okay, I think I did touch on this in my presentation, but this time around we've really focused on looking at those critical policy gaps and where action is needed to be accelerated to meet the targets. Our conclusions were that there's already significant work underway. There wasn't a critical policy gap in this space. But if you disagree with us, we'd really like to hear from you and understand why and what further attention needs to be given to. So I encourage you to make a submission.
Cool. I think we've got one more question coming through. Question is, does the Commission believe it has the true mandate to step outside the strategies and incentives applied to date and think differently and dramatically about achieving a real step change? Is the Commission hamstrung by their emissions targets rather than an opportunity for resetting the foundations? I might take the question about targets, Emma. One of the other pieces of work that we're going to provide advice to the government on at the end of 2024 and work on that is starting now, including a call for evidence that's also open if you want to check out our website, is advice on the 2050 targets, where we'll review whether there's been a significant change since the targets were set that justifies a change to those targets. Hopefully that answers some of the question. I know it's not directly what we're talking about today, but there is an avenue to provide your views and thoughts on that process.
Yeah, I think the other side, I may misunderstand the question, but I think the other side for us is I don't think we're hamstrung by in terms of the advice that we can give, but we are focused on achieving the targets and exceeding the targets ideally. We have our demonstration path, which shows us one way we know they can be achieved. So we are aligning our advice with it, but I don't think it's limiting our advice.
Yeah, I think that's very good. All right, have we got any further questions, folks in the audience? I might give people a few minutes to just see if, give people a couple of minutes to see if they've got any further questions. All right, if there are no further questions, I'll close this off. Just a reminder, we're only a Google away, so look at our website, look at our consultation process at haveyoursay.climatecommission.govt.nz, or email your questions to hello@climatecommission.govt.nz. Thanks very much, Emma. I really enjoyed the presentation, and thank you for answering the questions. Thank you, people who are in the audience, for coming. And now I'll hand over to Bevan for a closing karakia.
Oh, yeah.
Bevan, I'm afraid you're on mute, mate. So if you would like to, thank you. Should be good now.
Am I still on mute? Okay,
No,
I
you're
just had
good
a
now,
message saying
Bevan.
that someone else. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki a iu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga o te wairua tapu ake a mini. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora, Bevan.
Kia ora.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.